Today we want to try and beat every single Pokemon champion, and there is a lot of them, as Sapphire from the Pokemon manga. Sapphire has some really unique Pokemon on her team, and these are some of the Pokemon we'll be using. I'll also try to keep their moveset as accurate as possible when possible. If she does manage to beat them all, there's 3 powerful trainers she must face to claim victory. If a Pokemon faints, it's gone from the whole run, and a few more rules added on for more difficulty. Can Sapphire beat every Pokemon champion? First up is Pokemon Fire Red, and we've got the champion for this game, Blue. He's got some strong Pokemon that we definitely have to deal with. He's got a pretty balanced team, but so do we. We have some good moves and, well, some not so good moves. Let's begin. Blue's leaders is Pidgeot, and we lead with our Blaziken, nicknamed Chick. Turn 1, we hit a fiery flamethrower to bring Pidgeot all the way to the red, as we take a really hard aerial ace in return. Blue now uses a full restore, healing up his bird, as we just flamethrower once more, bringing him all the way back down. A final attack from Chick, and the first Pokemon of this run falls. This brings out Blue's Rhydon next, and we immediately swap into Tropi the Tropius on the Earthquake. We then go for a Razor Leaf, doing massive damage to Rhydon, and we just take it out with a critical hit. Now is Blue's Arcanine. We swap into Lorry the Wailord, as we take a flamethrower. Then Arcanine extreme speeds us, actually starting to hurt our massive whale before a single surf takes down Blue's third Pokemon. He sends out the 3-headed eggplant next. We have Ice Beam. Executor is weak to it. I decide to risk it, and we do fantastic damage, but not quite enough to take him out, as he thankfully misses a sleep powder. Blue now full restores, but it's in vain as we're just a faster Pokemon and he keeps burning full restores. But Lorry is just way too powerful, and we take down Executor with Ice Beams. 5th is Alakazam. It's quite scary, and Lorry's still sat at over half. I stay in, and a sidekick brings us to a sliver as Lorry's surf puts a huge dent in Alakazam. I decide now to swap into Curly, who resists a sidekick but is very fragile. I stay in once more to let Curly go to the red as we connect a super effective Shadow Ball to take down Alakazam. This leaves only his ace Blastoise left. We go back into Tropy as he goes for a weak bite on the swap. Now we hit a Magical Leaf for fantastic damage, bringing him well below half, as he just sets up the rain with a Rain Dance. Then he eats his Citrus Berry, restoring a little bit of HP too. A final Magical Leaf from Tropi, and we take him down, defeating Blue and beating our first champion of the challenge. It's time to head to Johto next. Lance is the champion of Johto and the next we face in the challenge. He's a Dragon type champion with a lot of flying types too, so Wailord could be a massive threat to him, but his Dragonites definitely do hurt. Let's do this. Lance's lead is Gyarados, and that's a really good matchup for our Curly, who's got a very good moveset, and one of them being Thunderbolt. All it takes is one Thunderbolt and the Water Snake just dies to our middle evolution Pokemon. Second out is Aerodactyl, and we swap straight into Rono for the first time, who tanks a Crunch. We then tank a Thunderfang that does nothing before instantly taking out Aerodactyl with a single Iron Tail. This brings out a Dragonite. I decide to stay in as we're still quite healthy, and he just Thunder Waves us. We break through the paralysis and hit a Stab Iron Tail that critical hits, and that's an easy knockout. This brings out his ace, a level 50 Dragonite. We stay in as he Fire Blast, doing big damage, and we get Parahaxed. Now we have to switch, so it's time to unleash Lorry. We swap on the Fire Blast that does nothing, and a single Ice Beam decimates his dragon. This brings out another Dragonite, who can't stand to Lorry's power either and falls to a single Ice Beam too. Last but not least is Charizard, his last hope. But we're a powerful water type, and a Surf takes him out, and with that we defeat Lance in a very easy battle for once. With our second champion down, it's time to face the Generation 3 champions. In Pokemon Omega Ruby, Steven is the champion. He's got mainly rock and steel types. We now have access to a Mega Blaziken, although she doesn't really do too well into Steven as a whole with some of his powerful Pokemon, but I think we can make it past him. Steven's lead is Skarmory, and we lead off with Chick. Turn 1, we don't have to wait, and we can use our Mega Evolution to Mega Evolve Blaziken into the powerhouse. We then shoot off a fiery flamethrower to bring Skarmory to his Sturdy, as he sets up a layer of spikes to hurt our team on the swap. We then get a speed boost too thanks to our new ability. Steven full restores up the Steel Bird, but a flamethrower just brings him right back down to 1 HP, and we get the burn. This means Skarmory just faints. Second out is Aggron. It has Sturdy too, and I can't risk Chick this early, so we need to swap. I go into Tropi, who is immune to the Earthquake, and I'm glad I did swap. We then hit a Magical Leaf for just about half as Aggron went for a Stone Edge, and we dodge it. That could have been really bad. A final Magical Leaf from our Tropi, and Aggron falls too. This brings out his Cradilly next, and we go into Rono as we get hit from a Confuse Ray, confusing us. That sucks. I stay in as we don't break through confusion, hurt hurting us a little bit before we take a massive Giga Drain in return. Deciding to risk it all, I stay in an Iron Tail. This time we do break through, hitting a super effective attack and taking down Cradilly. Steven's next Pokemon is Claydol, and I'm not staying in, so it's back to Troppy on the incoming Earth Power again to negate it. Now we can hit a super effective Magical Leaf for really good damage, just over half, as Claydol sets up a Light Screen boosting the team's special defense. I really don't want him to heal this thing, so I start charging a Solar Beam as we take an extra sensory for practically nothing. Now with our Solar Beam fully charged, it does just enough damage, with a critical hit too, to take down Claydol and not let Steven heal him. His fifth Pokemon is our Moldo, the ancient Bug and Rock type. A Bug move is most certainly coming my way, so we swap into Fado to eat the incoming X-Scissor. That still does good damage after spikes too. We then throw rocks at him, dealing fantastic damage and lowering his speed as he hits another X-Scissor to put us on 59 HP. I stay in and Rock Tomb once more, but we miss, and then we take an X-Scissor again, and Fado survives it somehow on only 7 HP. That was insanely close. Not risking anymore, I go into our Chick, who takes the X-Scissor reasonably well after taking some spike damage, because we got critical hitted. Then the following turn we can deal with our Moldo with a Sky Uppercut. However, there is now a huge threat in front of us, and that's his ace Pokemon Metagross. I don't think Blaziken's Flamethrower will take it out in one move. We've got to get chip damage on him. I go into Lorry as he Mega Evolves his Metagross and then goes for a Zen Headbutt, which we thankfully dodge, best case scenario. Now we get hit by a Zen Headbutt and it just does so much damage, but we do hold on in the yellow, and we hit a Surf for close to half of his HP. I'm looking at my team and nothing can swap in really. Only Troppy and Curly, who will just get obliterated. This is not looking good. I make the choice to go into Troppy as he goes for a Giga Impact, and I'm expecting Troppy to just die, but he survives it on 17 HP thanks to his natural bulk, and this is the opening we need. We swap straight to Chick and take some spikes damage on the turn Metagross is recharging. Then we can outspeed and hit a Flamethrower and just about take down Mega Metagross, somehow walking away from this fight deathless. With Steven beat and that fight behind us, it's time to move on to the second Generation 3 champion. Our second champion for Generation 3 is Wallace. He's a water type specialist with some powerful Pokemon. Tropius is very good here, but he has a lot of ice coverage, so we're going to have to switch smartly to win this. Wallace leads with a massive Wailord and we lead off with Chick. It's a really bad matchup for us, but I do have a plan. We hit a massive Sky Uppercut for big damage on the high HP Pokemon as he goes for a Water Spout now. He's low and it doesn't do that much to our Chick, only half. The next turn we can just Sky Uppercut again, and that takes down this big threat to us. Second out is Ludicolo, and I really can't risk dying to a Surf or Sky Uppercut not taking him out. So we swap into Troppy, who kind of walls this thing as a Giga Drain does nothing. We then fly in the sky as he sets up a double team, but we land our fly and do over half to Ludicolo as he double teams once more. We fly again in the skies, we dodge a Surf, and then we land our next fly again to take him out, and this is a great start. But now he's a bulky water type Milotic. I Razor Leaf for good damage, close to half as he lands a Toxic, putting us on a timer. We can't really dance with death, so we have to swap on the incoming Ice Beam into Chick, who tanks it nicely. We then go for a Sky Uppercut and do just enough damage to take out Milotic, and that is another threat down. This brings out Whiscash. He's 4 times weak to grass, and the Earthquake is pretty obvious, so we can definitely just swap to Troppy, who's immune to it. We then hit a 4 times super effective Magical Leaf to just one hit take out Whiscash. This brings out his Tentacruel now, who we really can't hurt. We gotta play around this thing. We swap to Chick on the Ice Beam, then we double into Lorry on the Sludge Bomb. We then hit back a pretty weak Surf and we get Sludge Bombed again and poisoned. Now we swap to Fido on the Sludge Bomb, which we tank nicely. Then we can get off a big Rock Tomb and we just have to pray we live a hit. And by the skin of our teeth again, Fido holds on with only 4 HP. That was insanely close. This lets us set up what I wanted too. We swap to Curly on the Ice Beam and it just does half to us. We can then outspeed and fire off an Electrifying Thunderbolt to take down Tentacruel. This leaves Wallace's last Pokemon, which is a Gyarados, and we already know it's weak to electric, so with a final strike from the sky we can take him down in one move, beating Wallace and conquering Generation 3. With Holman behind us, it's time to head on to Generation 4 next. Cynthia is the champion of the Sinnoh region. Her team is a powerful one. Our Curly is now fully evolved into a Gallade, giving us a powerful Pokemon, but how will we fare against Cynthia? Let's find out. Cynthia's lead is Spirit Tomb and we lead off with Rono for this fight. Turn 1 we hit a super hard Iron Tail for massive damage on Spirit Tomb as we get hit by a pretty weak Dark Pulse. Cynthia then heals her Ghost type as we bring her back to the red with an Iron Tail. Cynthia then doubles into Milotic on us as we hit an Aerial Ace and get off about a quarter of damage. We then swap to Lorry, who eats up the Surf, and we surf back for basically nothing as Milotic Aqua rings for a passive recovery. I then go for an Ice Beam fishing for a freeze, and we actually get it turn 1. That's perfect. We then take immediate advantage of the freeze and swap into Troppy as he keeps healing passively with Aqua Ring. We then set up a Solar Beam and thankfully he stays frozen. Then we blast Milotic with Raw Energy and down he goes in one attack. This brings out Cynthia's Togekiss. I swap into Fado as we dodge an attack. We then take a Water Pulse to above half as our Rock Tomb is doing just shy of the same amount, but we're lowering his speed in the process. We Rock Tomb once more, putting him in the red as the Water Pulse puts us on a sliver again. But Fado then takes down Togekiss with a Rock Tomb, putting in solid work as always. Out comes Roserade next. We swap to Chick on the Energy Ball that does nothing to us. We then reply with a Fiery Kick to the face to take down Roserade. Now he's a threat Garchomp, but I do have an answer. First we swap into Troppy on the Earthquake. Then we double into Curly on the Dragon Rush, which we survive. Then with a 4-time super effective Ice Punch, we take down a dragon in just one strike. This brings out a weakened Spirit Tomb again. Cynthia full restores as we Ice Punch for solid damage on the heal. We then swap back to Chick as we take an Omnious Wind for a little bit of damage too. We reply with a Blaze Kick and we take down Spirit Tomb, leaving only just a Lucario left. We go for a Blaze Kick again and it's enough for the one-hit knockout, beating Cynthia and really utilising our whole team in doing so. That's Generation 4 done, it's time to head to Gen 5. First up in Gen 5 is Alder, and he's got some solid Pokemon with a big weakness to fire, with a few bugs on his team too. I honestly think Blaziken destroys his team, but Volcarona is still a threat as we only have the move Peck. Let's take on Univert. Alder's leader Viselgor is a fantastic matchup for our Blaziken to start with. Viselgor goes for a me first and a move allowing him to copy what I'm going to do, so he just Blaze Kicks us for nothing and we just Blaze Kick him and destroy him in a fair trade. Second is Bufalon. We have Sky Uppercut, a fighting type move. We land it and it critical hits, taking down his second Pokemon with ease. Third, Alder sends out his Scavalier, but it's 4 times weak to fire, so one single Blaze Kick and half of Alder's team has now been swept by our Chick. But then is Volcarona. We swap into Fado as he sets up a Quiver Dance, boosting his stats by 1 stage each. He then overheats us, putting us all the way to our Sturdy as a Rock Tomb from Fado takes down this huge threat. This brings out Vanillix the Ice Cream next, and straight into Chick on the Flash Cannon that does a little bit of damage back to us. We then miss a Sky Uppercut as he sets up a Light Screen. The following turn we land a kick and we just melt the Ice Cream, leaving just a Drudagon left for us to face. We swap into Rono as he outrages us, critical hitting us, and it does nothing. He then outrages us again, bringing us to half as he's confused and an Iron Tail just does massive damage back to the Dragon type. Alder now full restores Drudagon, snapping him out of confusion and healing him as we bring him back low with an Iron Tail. Not risking losing Rono now, I swap into Lorry who tanks his superpower to about half on the switch. We then shoot off a freezing Ice Beam to finish off his dragon, beating Alder and our first champion of Generation 5. But there's still one more champion in Univert left to face. Iris is the second champion and the majority of her Pokemon are dragons. I'm actually not worried about her at all. While Haxorus does have a Focus Sash and we need to break it, I've got a feeling Curly is just going to decimate her. Iris's lead is Hydreigon and we lead off with Curly. Turn 1 we Ice Punch the dragon for big damage before we take a Dragon Pulse to half. The next turn this just means we can take down Hydreigon with another punch. This brings out Heragron next, who's 4 times weak to fighting and a close combat just decimates him too. Third is Archeops. I know we're faster, so I decide to stay in an Ice Punch and Curly's just way too strong and half of Iris's team is down too, but now he's a major threat in Haxorus. We can't stay in, so we swap into Troppy as he Earthquakes but misses. He then Dragon Dances as we hit a very bad Magical Leaf. This is not good. Focus Sash is broke, so we've got to swap. I go into Lorry as he Dragon Dances again. I've got really no choice, I have to stay in, and he thankfully gets greedy and Dragon Dances for the 3rd time, meaning Lorry can take him down with an Ice Beam. That is so bad. If he attacked us, I think he just swept us. I'll take it. Out next is Lapras. We swap to Curly on the incoming Thunderbolt and we live it. We then hit a stab close combat to obliterate the bulky transport Pokemon too, leaving just a Drudagon left in our way again. Curly hits an Ice Punch and it critical hits to take down Drudagon in a pretty weird battle. We destroyed her, but if she chose to attack us with Haxorus, she destroyed us. Let's leave this behind us and move on to Generation 6. Diantha is a champion of Kalos and who we take on next. Her team's pretty strong and she's got a Mega Gardevoir, although we've got a Mega Blaziken again, whose fighting type really does hurt Diantha. Diantha's lead is a fighting flying type Hawlucha and we lead off with Chick. Not the best lead for us, but I'm hoping to outspeed. We activate our Mega Evolution powering up Blaziken, but Hawlucha's still faster and hits a really hard flying press. That's kind of bad for our longevity. The plus side is we take him out with a Blaze Kick to the face. Diantha sends out a Tyrantrum the T-Rex next and we've got Sky Uppercut. We land it and Tyrantrum being part rock type means it can't take it and falls next. This brings out a Gudra next. Not risking dying, I swap into Lorry who takes takes the muddy water on the swap very well, but it does lower our accuracy in the process. We then hit a super effective ice beam, not even doing half as Gudra's really bulky, and we take a Dragon Pulse to the face too. I go for a risky play here and go back into Chick, and we live the move on 2 HP. That was a very stupid idea, but it has paid off. Now we can take out Gudra with a single Sky Uppercut. The reason I went into Blaziken was to be able to just inflict way more damage on our team, and the Ice Dinosaur Aurora is next. Ice and Rock type being 4 times weak to fighting, meaning it can't live to a Sky Uppercut also, and down he goes. This brings out Galgeist, but it's got Shadow Sneak. We swap into Curly on the Shadow Sneak and we take good damage from it. Then for some reason I go for a knockoff rather than Ice Punch. We still do big damage, but Galgeist survives it and goes for a Phantom Force. This means we definitely have to swap. So I go into Rono, who tanks a hit like a champ. The next turn Galgeist goes for a Trick or Treat, adding the Ghost type into our Aggron, who then takes down Galgeist with an Aerial Ace. Now is her last Pokemon, Gardevoir. With the Ghost type added to us on Aggron, we can't stay in. I go into Troppy as Gardevoir Mega Evolves and goes for a Shadow Ball that we eat up rather nicely. We can swap back into Rono now to eat the incoming move, and it's a Moonblast, but Mega Gardevoir is still really powerful and it does more than I hoped. Looks like we can live just about another hit, so we stay in. Gardevoir Thunderbolts us, but we hang on with a sliver of HP, land an Iron Tail, and with Aggron's great attack stat, take down her Mega, beating Diantha and Generation 6. It's time to sail to Alola and take on Generation 7 next. How is the person we fight to become champion here, and he's always one of the most trickiest. His team really does pack a punch. I think we can deal with his Incineroar Z move, but I'm always worried about losing a Pokemon here. It's our last 3DS game. Can we keep this going? How's lead is an Alolan Raichu, and I lead off with Curly. Even though we take a really big hit at the start thanks to a critical hit, it's worth it by replying with a knockoff to take down his pesky lead. That the majority of the time is a big issue for me. Second out is Noivern, and we actually have a pretty good swap into Rono on the Air Slash that he misses anyway. We then take a Dark Pulse, hurting Rono as we connect an Iron Tail, and we bring Noivern really low too. We take one more Dark Pulse, putting Rono at under half before he picks up the knockout on Noivern. Third is Tauros, and it's always a problem. I swap into Troppy as we dodge the Earthquake. We then take a Double Edge for massive damage as he hurts himself from Recoil too, before we do another dent into him with a Magical Leaf, bringing him to under half. We've got a swap, and I need to keep Lori healthy for Incineroar, so I go into Fedor once again to take the Double Edge, and Tauros is whittling himself down with Recoil. He brings Fedor really low before Fedor gets to pick up the knockout, and he's been our brick wall this run, tanking all the hits. This brings out the Ice Crab Crabominable next, and it's got such a high attack stat. I'm hoping it goes for Ice Hammer as I swap into Chick, and thankfully he does, but you can just see how much damage we take from a resisted attack. The next turn we land a Blaze Kick to the Crab's head and take it down. This brings out his ace Incineroar. Fearing the Z move, I swap straight to Lori, but he actually goes for an Earthquake instead. Even though we've got really high HP, he still does big damage to us. To my surprise, we actually outspeed Incineroar the next turn and hit a super effective Surf, but Wailord's special attack isn't great and we don't take it out, and we take a Darkest Lariat to a sliver of HP in return. How now doubles out into Leafeon, allowing us to get a little bit of chip onto him. I misclick here and I go into Troppy as we take a weak Quick Attack. Then we go into Chick as Leafeon Quick Attacks again. I go for a Blaze Kick, but Leafeon is faster and puts Chick on 6 HP before we land a Blaze Kick to take him down. That was another really close call. This just leaves a weakened Incineroar left as we go for a double kick to take him down, beating How Deathless. With Alola beat, it's time to move on to the Switch games next. So for Trace, we don't have any viable options for the Generation 1 remake. We can't face him. We won Kanto by beating Blue at least. So for now, we'll just have to leave it up to you if you think Sapphire would have beat Trafe. Moving on to Generation 8 now. The champion for Sword and Shield is Leon. His team is really strong with a Gigantamax Charizard, with some huge threats too. We've also had to say goodbye to Troppy and Fido for now, as these are not in the games thanks to Dexit, but we substituted in Relly the Relicanth and we borrow Ruby's Rara, who's a Gardevoir, like Sapphire did in the manga. Leon's lead is his Aegislash and I lead off with Relly. We've got a pretty good moveset, and the reason we lead Relly is 2 words, Stealth and Rocks, which we set up turn 1 as Aegislash goes for a King Shield, meaning it's free for our Relly to do so. Turn 2 we Earthquake Aegislash for big damage as he's in shield form and he survives. He then replies with a Shadow Ball for good damage onto our Relly, but the following turn Relly can take down Aegislash with another Earthquake. This brings out Haxorus, and honestly we don't have a good switch in. It took me some time to try and think about how I'm going to play around this thing, as its moveset is so dynamic. In the end, I think of my best play, and I think that's to go into Lorry. We tanked the Earthquake on the swap pretty decently, but now we can't live in Outrage, nothing on my team can deal with it. I choose to Dynamax Lorry, making him absolutely massive. Haxorus Outrage leaves us on just a sliver of HP that we wouldn't have lived if we didn't Dynamax, and we can hit a max Hailstorm to obliterate the Dragon type. Out next is another Dragon in Dragapult. We actually do have an answer for this Pokemon. I go into Rara, who tanks a Thunderbolt on the swap. We then get hit by a super hard Shadow Ball, barely hanging on again before replying with our own super effective Shadow Ball for massive damage, taking down Dragapult. After Hail 2, Rara is now sitting on only 17 HP. This now brings out Mr. Rhyme, the dancing Mr. Mime. My best swap isn't Chick, as it's part Psychic type this thing, it's Rono. As we swap, we get hit by a Freeze Dry that we take really well. Then Mr. Rhyme hits a really hard Thunderbolt as we reply with our own devastating Iron Tail to take him down. Now is another problem, Inteleon. Snipe Shot actually destroys my remaining Pokemon and Leon is wearing me down. I can't deal with it super effectively either. The only thing we can do is go into Curly on the incoming attack that does close to half to us. We then get Tearful Lut, an annoying move that reduces our attack stat, but our Psycho Cut does massive damage still. We take another Snipe Shot, putting us close to the red as the Psycho Cut then takes down Inteleon. His final Pokemon is his Ace Charizard, and we're honestly in big trouble. The only thing I can do is try and stall out his Gigantamax. Now we've got to gamble a little bit by going into Chick, hoping he doesn't max Airstream yet again and we just instantly die. Thankfully we make the right call and he goes for a max Overgrowth, not doing too much damage and setting up Grassy Terrain too, which heals us. We've now got to swap again and I go back into Rono to take yet another max Airstream, boosting Charizard's speed even more. But we are healing passively with Grassy Terrain too. It's now the last turn of Gigantamax and we only have one swap into Chick left. Luckily for us, he doesn't max Airstream, instead he goes for his signature move, G-Max Wildfire. It still does big damage to us and it sets up a passive dot to hurt us at the end of every turn. We now swap into Relly as Charizard Air Slashes and it does good damage, and after G-Max Wildfire damage we're very low. Grassy Terrain does heal us, but my plan has come into action. Charizard charges a Solar Beam, giving us one opportunity to hit the Rock Slide and we take him down, beating Leon in a very close battle. With him beat, only one champion remains to be beaten. The last champion is Geeta for Generation 9 and she's got some really unique Pokemon too. We've had to substitute in Ruby Swampert for Aggron as he's not in these games. Can we defeat her and beat every Pokemon champion as Sapphire from the manga? Let's find out. Her lead is the Sparfer and our lead is Rara. Turn 1 we hit a Shadow Ball and just obliterate the Psychic Ostrich in one attack. This gives us a really strong start to the battle. Second out is King Gambit and we swap into Chick, who has a fighting type move, and it being 4 times super effective means King Gambit stands no chance and falls to a double kick. Third out is a bulky Avalugg, and we've got a super strong special attacker in Rara. We swap to her and shoot off a Shadow Ball, and Avalugg takes massive damage before we barely survive an avalanche in return. The next turn, Rara can take down Avalugg, but it's now pretty crippled. Out next is Geeta's Go-Go, and back to Chick we go. One super effective Blaze Kick takes down her Grass type, and this is looking good. Geeta goes into a Psychic Fish Veluza next. Our Curly goes for a knockoff, doing big damage to her, and then we take a Liquidation in return. A final knockoff from Curly and down Veluza goals, leaving just her final Pokemon left, and it's a race, Glamora. We swap into Swampert, who I forgot to nickname, I apologise, as she terrestrializes into a pure rock type. We hit a massive Earthquake, bringing her to the red, and Toxic Debris flies everywhere as she hits an Earth Power that we eat up very nicely. This means the next turn, one last Earthquake from our Swampert puts her at 0 HP, acting Toxic Debris yet again, and then taking her down, beating Geeta and beating every single Pokemon champion as Sapphire. Or have we? Atop of the Snowy Mount Silver is Legendary Trainer Red and a Champion Trainer at that. Also, with the final 3 bosses in front of us, I've upgraded our moveset to showcase a Pokemon's true power. We lead Curly into his Pikachu. We outspeed and connect a Psycho Cut to instantly take down Red's Ace. Second, he sends out Charizard and we've got to swap. I go into Fado, who takes a Flare Blitz decently. We then take an Air Slash, putting us in the red as we connect to Stone Edge to take down his Charizard in one hit. We're now really low after Hail, so we've got to swap onto Lapras, and I go into Curly to take the weak Brine. We then hit a huge close combat to take down the Transport Pokemon in one move. Then Red sends out Snorlax, but it's the same scenario. One close combat does way too much damage and Snorlax falls over as well. Out comes Venusaur, and no reason still to swap from Curly as the Psycho Cut just takes him down, leaving just a Blastoise left in our way to victory. We swap into Lorry on the Blizzard, which we take decently. All we can do is attack him with a Surf as it does good damage, and we take a Focus Blast, putting us at below half. We Surf once more, putting him lower as the Focus Blast puts us on the edge. We've got to swap, so I go into Chick as he flash cannons us, not dealing much damage at all. Then Chick can Sky Uppercut Blastoise, taking him down, beating Red in a pretty one-sided battle. He disappears from the mountain and we continue. Team Plasma N and a champion himself, who's also got a legendary. We need to win to continue. N leads with Reshiram and we lead off with Fado. We take a massive fusion flare as our Earthquake brings Reshiram to a sliver. N4 restores his legendary, but our next Earthquake grows a little bit better and we take him down. Second out is Vanillix. We outspeed and connect to Stone Edge to just take down the Ice Cream Cone in one move too. Third end goes into Caracosta. We got a swap, so into Lorry we go, who eats up the waterfall nicely. Lorry then surfs on the waves, doing massive damage as we take a big Stone Edge in return. A final surf on the waves and we take down Caracosta too. This brings out Clink Clank. We swap into Curly on the Thunderbolt and it does a little bit of damage, but we do get paralysed, which isn't great. Metal Sound then reduces our special defense even more as we connect to close combat to nuke the steel Pokemon. Out comes Archeops next, and we've got to switch, so into Rono we go on the incoming acrobatics. We then eat a Stone Edge like it's nothing before we miss an Iron Tail. Archeops hits another Stone Edge as we finally connect to our Iron Tail, doing what Rono always does and taking him out with one move. Last and not least is Zoroark. A Focus Blast is certainly coming my way and we go into Troppy as we dodge it. We then take a Night Slash for not much damage as our Air Cutter doesn't do too much either. We take one more Night Slash, putting us really low before our last Energy Ball takes down his frail Pokemon, beating N and finally conquering Univille once more. It's time for the last champion of the run. Kieran, the most latest champion to be introduced and one of the hardest. This has a focus on double battles, and honestly we've done really well with 0 deaths up to this point, but can we beat the final champion? Let's find out. Kieran leads Politoed and Dragonite with an emphasis on a rain setup here. We lead off with Troppy and Curly. Anytime I can use weather to turn it into my favour on this fight, I do have to take advantage of it. First, Curly hits a super effective Ice Punch, breaking Dragonite's multi-scale. Then we set up the Sun with Sunny Day with Troppy, before we take an Ice Beam and we barely hang on from Politoed. Dragonite then misses his Hurricane, and this is a really good start. The next turn we can Solar Beam Politoed for massive damage, not quite taking him out as Curly hits an Ice Punch to take down Dragonite. But we suffer our first death of the run with Troppy dying to an Ice Beam from Politoed. RIP. We send out Rara now as he sends out the huge threat Porygon Z. Porygon Z Shadow Balls Curly and we survive it with a sliver of HP, something not many Pokemon do, and we hit a close combat to nuke the monster and take him out as Rara's Dazzling Gleam finishes off Politoed, and this is looking really good. Kieran now sends out Incineroar and Grimmsnarl. Incineroar fakes out Curly, finally taking him down and putting us now at 2 deaths. Rara can hit a super effective Dazzling Gleam on Grimmsnarl and do good damage to Incineroar too, before we take a huge Spirit Break, lowering our special attack by 1 stage as well. I send out Fado next. Rara Dazzling Gleams and that takes down Grimmsnarl. Then Incineroar heals a little bit with its Citrus Berry. Donphan Gunk Shocks Incineroar, bringing him lower and poisoning him, but a Flare Blitz seals Rara's fate and takes her out as it's Sun Boosted too, putting us at death number 3. We now go into our Swampert as Kieran sends out his last Pokemon, Hydrapple. He terrestrializes him into a pure fighting type and Swampert hits everyone on the field with an Earthquake, taking down his Incineroar and doing minimal damage to Hydrapple, as Fado's Rock Slide also doesn't do much to him too. Hydrapple goes for a Fickle Beam into Swampert and we eat it up quite nicely. The next turn we Earthquake once more on Hydrapple and it doesn't really do much. We then Gunk Shot, which puts him in the red and poisons him, sealing his fate, but in the last act of defiance he goes for a Fickle Beam and he goes all out, nuking Fado and putting him to rest with 4 deaths and 2 Pokemon left, Chick and Swampert. Chick can finish the fight with an Acrobatics, taking down Hydrapple, beating Kieran and every single Pokemon champion as Sapphire. In total 4 deaths, with all of them coming at the hands of Kieran. Sapphire's team handled every single champion really well and we got to use some cool Pokemon like Tropius and Blaziken. If you got any suggestions on who you want to see next, let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new for more Pokemon content. As always, I appreciate you watching and I'll see you in the next one.